Assalamu alaikum students, hope you are enjoying good health at your homes, and in today's online study session week 9 we'll complete the last part of our chapter number 7, solutions and suspensions. So beta, you all are well aware that we have completed the first part of the chapter, which includes solutions and their uses. Last part consists of suspensions, its types and its uses, and at last we'll also compare the properties of solutions and suspensions. So starting on, first of all, what is actually a suspension is. So suspension is basically defined as a mixture in which the solid particles, the particles of the solute, they are too large to move freely with the solvent particles, and these particles, they do not make a homogeneous mixture. Rather, these particles of the solute, they settle down after some time. Such sort of a solution, such sort of a mixture is basically known as a suspension. A very much good example is actually you can take from surroundings, is mixing a sand into a water. So you will see, when you will take a sand and mix it in a glass of a water, so the water will get dirty, it will get turbid due to sand. But when you left that water on stand for few minutes, so you will see after some time the sand will settle down. So such type of a solution, such type of a mixture is actually known as a suspension. It is obvious from the diagram shown in this picture as well that sand is being added into the water, but it does not completely mixes, but it settles down at the bottom. Next is slurry. Slurry is basically a type of suspension. What sort of a suspension is this actually? It is a suspension which contains a large amount of insoluble solid solute. Means the particles of the solute, they are not at all soluble, first thing, and second thing is that they are in very much large amount. A good example could be a paste of a cement mixed with the water. You might have observed that when you mix a cement with the water, it makes a thick substance, it makes a thick mixture. That mixture is used to join the two bricks, and it is also used in construction as well. So such sort of a mixture, such sort of a solution or suspension is actually known as a slurry. Next, we'll study some of the uses of the suspension. First use is when you mix a soil in a water. So you'll see, when you will stir that mixture of soil and water, so the water will get a color of a soil, and soil will mix in the water. But when you leave this mixture on a standby for few minutes, you will see the soil will settle down. So mixing a soil in water, it forms a suspension. Secondly, the fruit squashes. You are very much aware that the fruit squashes that we take in our daily routine, they contain little chunks of the food or the pulp of the fruit, like orange squash is an example. So the pulp of the orange is mixed with the liquid. It also is an example of suspension. So it is advised that whenever you take fruit squash, you should shake the bottle first, so that all the particles, they should form a good mixture, and you can have them, enjoy them in every bite. Next example we'll see is an example of a blood. So it is said that yes, the blood that circulates in our body, it is also suspension. How? Because blood contains three types of cells: RBCs, the red blood cells; WBCs, the white blood cells; and thirdly, the platelets. These all are actually the cells, and they do not form a homogeneous mixture with the fluid of the blood, which is known as plasma. So these cells, they do not completely mix, they do not completely dissolve, and they settle down after some time when you bottle the blood. So this is also an example of a suspension. Lastly is an example of an ocean or a river or a lake. So when you stir up the bottom of the river or a lake, it will also produces a suspension, because beta you are well aware that the bed of the lakes and the rivers, it is made up of mud, it is made up of soil, and it is made up of sand, and these things they do not dissolve in a water. So when you stir up the bottom, so sand and soil, it will come up, form a solution, but after some time they'll settle down. So we'll say that yes, the river, the lake, the oceans, they all are also the suspensions, they are also the types of the suspensions. Okay, the last example or the uses of suspension is actually a lassi, which is a combination of a yogurt, milk, and water. You might have observed while forming a lassi, you mix or completely thoroughly mix as yogurt in a liquid or a milk. So the particles of the yogurt, they get completely mixed with the water and the liquid. But after some time, when you put aside a jar of a lassi, so you'll see the yogurt particles, they will settle down and water will separate out, it will form a layer above the yogurt particles. So yes, it is also a form of a suspension. Now we will compare the properties of solution and suspensions. We'll see how solution is different from suspension. So number one is that the particles of the solute in a suspension, they do not settle out, because we have studied as that solution is a homogeneous mixture, so the particles, they completely get dissolved, they do not settle down, while in suspension the particles of the solute, they settle down on standing. As we have now discussed the few examples, including lassi, including squashes, fruit squashes, and soil in a water. So we have observed and we have studied that yes, the particles of the solute in suspension, they settle down. Number two, particles in a solution, they pass through the ordinary filter paper, while the suspensions, the particles cannot be separated by using the ordinary filter paper. So basically you put a paper over a glass, over a container, and you pass the solution through that ordinary filter paper, so it will pass down. But the suspension, when you pass the suspension from the filter paper, the solid particles, they will settle down on the filter paper and the liquid part will be separated. Lastly, the light rays, when you pass this light rays through a solution, means you take a glass of a water and you allow a light to pass through it, so you will see the light rays will pass and no particular shadow of that solution will be formed. While in suspension, you take a glass of a lassi or a fruit squash, so you will pass a light through it, so you will observe that light will not pass through that container and it will cast a shadow over the surfaces. So we'll see that yes, the lights will not pass through the suspension. Okay, that's it. But this was the last topic or the last part of our chapter. This chapter is now completed. Now what you have to do is you have to thoroughly read this chapter from your textbooks, and then you have to answer these 3 questions on your neat notebooks. Lastly, there are some of the video links that will help you to understand this phenomena and these concepts more clearly. Thank you.